welcome to our bulletin tonight. It's the 30th day of May 2015. This is the point of news. And we have a new member to the team, but let's introduce ourselves first. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole. And I'm John Allen Namu. Those new members you just saw a few minutes ago, the newest members of the KTN team. Yeah. Jamal Gaddafi and Michelle Ngele, of course on editorial. That's yes, our girl. So yes, welcome to the team, people. Welcome home. And by the time we're done with you, you're going to be a force to reckon with in this industry. Congratulations to them. We'll hopefully be speaking to them or hearing from them. I believe there's an after party, so we'll try and see if we can get them in studio. But welcome to the team. Maybe one day Michelle Ngele will be right here, where I am. No, maybe you know what? Why don't we just give them our things and Michelle can read the news. And we can go. I know it. You know, and we're done. Baptism by fire. Indeed, yes. All right. So we have a great bulletin lined up for you tonight. We're going to be having our exclusive interview today with the Executive Director of Oxfam International, Winnie Byanyima. We'll be talking about a host of issues, women's representation in Kenya and indeed in the region. We'll be talking about the Millennium Development Goals. We'll be talking about development in Africa and how we're going to fund our own development programs ourselves as opposed to depending on donor aid. What are some of the things we can do? She's here. She's been speaking to various leaders in the country and we'll get her insights on just where we are development-wise. Of course, there's the pros and the cons of the Food Crops Act, more commonly known as the Mama Mboga Act. We'll be speaking to an economist on the same here on KTN Weekend Prime. Stay here. This is the bulletin that you want to watch tonight. Here now are the highlights on KTN Weekend Prime.
Naamua kununua AL na bana tuakameza. Sasa ile imefika jioni nikampea dawa nikaona amezidi.
Malaria bites Kakamega County. 7 infants dead as hundreds flock hospitals.
Tuambia mtu atoa hiyo fine ya 500 atatoa wapi? Na ukiuza kitu kama nyanya, boga, haiwezi kutoresha kwa mahitaji yako na uko na watoto.
Naona serikali kuu arifasi sheria. Waone ya kwamba tukifukuza hawa pato watapata ile mapato ambao walikuwa wamepata mbeleni ama watakuwa kupoteza.
Cutting off Mama Mboga. Kenyans outraged by proposed food regulations.
Mtu alikuwa mtu yangu. Ningekuwaje mtu ya kupeleka watu yangu tena The Hague? Umeona washahidi The Hague. Ujaona mshahidi ambaye mtumwa na rais. Mashahidi ni kina nani?
The ICC debate explodes again as Jubilee launches new offensive against ICC prosecutor.
Unafaa ujue huyu mwanamke nimeshika urafiki naye. Nampenda. Huenda akawa mke wangu. Na kama huenda umtaki awe mke wako, basi usimtie mimba.
Tumekataa. Haite vile anataka huyo baba yake. Juu mtoto ni wake.
And the devil in the details. Why girls may want to be very careful who they have babies with.
Thank you for joining us on the program tonight. Our sign language interpreter is William Silla. We want to start off our bulletin today with a debate that has hit social media sites once again with criticism and outrage over the proposed regulations to control the production and sale of fresh produce. Now, of particular concern to most people are the proposals to remove that lady or man who sells at random corners in the estates and restrict them to designated marketplaces. KTN's senior reporter Carol Nderi took the regulations out to the Mama Mbogas, and this is the story that came out.
Were at it again. The hashtag Mama Mboga was all the rage, with Kenyans taking to Twitter to express their fury over the proposed laws that will regulate the sale of certain fresh produce. Tweets came in fast and furious, a majority in support of that Mama Mboga who sells her produce in the estates. Now, here is the contention. A set of rules proposed by the government-based authority, Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Authority, bears heavily on the Mama Mboga as she cannot continue with business as usual. Men too partake in this estate's greengrocer business. The proposed regulations, as stipulated in Section 27, state that certain produce can only be sold at designated areas such as markets with the approval of the authority and the county governments. This list states which foods will be regulated. It comprises cereals such as maize, rice, millet, sorghum, wheat. Legumes such as beans, soya beans, cowpeas, pigeon peas, and root and tubers such as Irish potatoes, sweet potatoes, and cassava. Whoever will sell these foods outside specific market areas will be liable on conviction to a fine not exceeding 500,000 shillings or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 1 year or both. Teresa Wangare is a greengrocer, and this is the business that feeds her 2 children. The new rules do not make sense to her, she says.
Ukiwaambia mtu atoe hiyo fine ya 500 atatoa wapi? Na ukiuza kitu kama nyanya, boga, haiwezi kutoresha kwa mahitaji yako na uko na watoto. Sasa wanataka tuende wapi?
Views expressed by her fellow greengrocers in the estates.
Na sisi sote hatuwezi toshea kwa kuandikwa, ndio tunakuwa self-employed.
Sasa hii nimeomba tu pahali ninaoshea nini mboga zangu naenda nje. Sababu sina pahali, imejaa completely.
To many, the Mama Mboga Kibanda is a one-stop shop where they can conveniently buy food partly prepared for them, such as chopped sukuma wiki, peeled potatoes, boiled beans, you name it. A favorite especially for career people who get home late from work and in between traffic jams and the hassle have no time for elaborate dinner preparations. From Elgeyo Marakwet, where potato farmers and vendors abound.
So nafikiri tegemeo kuu hapa area hii ni viazi. Na vile kaunti wanasema kwamba watu wauzaji wa viazi waondoke kwa hii barabara, itakuwa ikipoteza sasa mapato, maana wanategemea wale watu ambao wanatoka Eldoret, wengine wanatoka Rugby.
Habari sio kama watu kwenda kanto. Kama nataka ile pesa yenu kidogo kidogo hiyo naweza, lakini naweza hurumia hawa. Ndio chua hii pesa kidogo kidogo hii hawezi kupata. Hii pesa hii hawa kitabu. Hakuna pesa.
To Thika in Kiambu County, where traders aggressively sell all kinds of agricultural produce.
Kitu kaa hii waru nauza kidogo, tuminzi nauza kidogo, at least napata tu riziki yangu.
The proposed rules have shaken the country long before they are approved by stakeholders. And as the regime debate continues, what remains to be seen is what direction the stakeholders will take in light of the views expressed by the traders themselves, and that is of anger and disbelief. Carol Derry, KTN, Nyeri.
Of course, this story affects more than just the Mama Mboga. People in the fishery industry, people in large-scale and small-scale farming are affected, and smallholder farmers are indeed the majority, the bulk of the people who support the food industry in this country and who make up the majority of people who farm in this country. We'll be speaking to Karithi Muremi, an economist, in a moment on these issues. But speaking of the Mama Mboga debacle on social media, quite a bit of responses there, quite a number of negative responses. Many people having read the regulations but not the substantive act. There are, according to a number of economists as well as food analysts, some pros, some cons, trying to regularize the food market and food economy in this country, trying to create a number of standards on the same, trying to create a marketplaces in different places. Food, of course, is a devolved function in this new dispensation, this new constitutional dispensation with regard to the counties. So the counties are indeed the units of devolution that will be dealing more strictly with the Mama Mboga regulations. The directorate or the authority that is going to be in charge of implementing these some of these regulations is the Agriculture, Fisheries and Food Authority. A number of analysts have already spoken about this authority being perhaps the second most important authority after the Kenya Revenue Authority. After all, it controls such an important resource. That resource is food. Let's try and see if we have Karithi Muremi, the economist, who's analyzed this issue for us in the past, online from our city center studios. Karithi, can you hear me? Karithi Muremi, can you hear me? All right, we're still trying to get Karithi Murimi. Of course, this responses that we're trying to get for you as well on social media on the Mama Mboga debacle having taken social media by storm. Send us your opinions, of course, on the Mama Mboga debacle. We'll try and see if we can sample some of those later on in this bulletin. Now, we'll just move on to another story as we wait for Karithi Murimi to come on stream. And this story is quite interesting as well, dealing with some of the social issues in this country. Are you a mother? Does your child bear the father's name on your birth certificate, on your child's birth certificate? Did you consult the father in that decision? Now, these are questions that have been raised concerning a certain law in Kenya that compels mothers to first seek approval from a child's biological father before using his name. Watch.
At the corridors of justice, a case that has all the potential of sparking a debate on who has the rights of naming an infant is ongoing. A mother of a 4-year-old girl is asking the courts to allow her insert the name of her child's father into the child's birth certificate. But the Attorney General's office says not without consulting the father. Apparently, it's illegal for a mother to name her child after the father without the father's blessing. Attorney General Professor Githu Muigai, in response to the case, quotes Section 12 of the Births and Deaths Registration Act. Sections of the Act stipulate that a man cannot be entered in the register as a father of any child except either at the joint request of the father and mother or upon production of evidence that the two are married according to the law. It's a stipulation that is slowly generating heat among Kenyans.
It may be good because if I'm married now, I'm married, yeah? And if my wife wants to call my son after me, there's no problem on that.
It is not a must to go consult about the name because you are sure for the father of the child.
The law appears to have certain loopholes that some Kenyans say may be used as avenues of exploitation.
You cannot name a child after me when I don't know, or that child does not belong to me.
But indeed, who has the final say as to what name a child should be given?
Ukishika urafiki na mwanamke, kitu cha kwanza unafaa ujue huyu mwanamke nimeshika urafiki naye, nampenda, huenda akawa mke wangu, na kama huenda umtaki awe mke wako, basi usimtie mimba.
Tumekataa, aite vile anataka huyo baba yake. Juu mtoto ni wake.
Even though the act is limited to only when the mother wants to name the child after the father, critics insist the law goes contrary to the African customs on naming.
Children must have identity, and that identity has always been with the father.
The case presented in the High Court to Justice Isaac Lenaola is yet to be determined, but its ruling will send ripples across the country where the baby daddy issue is not a small matter. It's a court case that is set to give meaning to the phrase, what is in a name? And the debate continues as to whether the father has the final say in the name that will be penned down in the birth certificate of a child. Timothy Otieno, KTN.
Timothy Otieno dealing with some bread and butter and pillow issues there with respect to the naming of children and the use of the name of the biological father on birth certificate, something that has stirred quite a bit of debate and has been part of the Kenyan debate for quite a bit of time, except it hasn't come to the fore quite recently. Let's move on to some political issues with respect to polling, and Ipsos has just released a poll today on various political issues, including the dates of the election, what you think about when the date of the election is, when you'd like that date of the election, amongst some other issues. The first slide that we have here is about the date of the next election, and we can see 65% of people in urban areas believe that know the date of the next election, which is of course August 2017. But the total, again corresponding to this, between here 65 and 64, the average here is 64% of the people polled in this most recent poll believe that the date of the next general election is August 2017. But the question is, how many people actually want that date to remain as it is or have it moved to December of the same year. Let's just go to the next slide on the same. The next slide talks about that exact question, and the numbers are quite staggering. As we get to the next slide, there we go. 80% in Nyanza, 71% in the Rift Valley, 68 in Central, 64 in Nairobi, tapering down all the way to Coast Province, but the national average is around the 60s, the high 60s and high 70s with respect to that. How many people support the changing of the data? A number of people have had that debate already, having that been the tradition quite a number of years ago. Another thing that was polled in this most recent poll is the confidence level that members of the public have in the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission to hold the next election. We've heard what CORD leader Raila Odinga has said with respect to that many times, including saying that CORD may boycott the next election if the commissioners that are there right now stay in office. That response, quite interestingly, if we just move on to the next slide as well, 42% in total believe or have confidence in the IEBC as the body that should oversee the next general election. 42% is not a very good or very strong percentage, but there still are quite a number of months and years to the next general election. That could change. As the saying goes, a day in politics is a very long time, and a day in administration as well of political contests like this could be a very long time. We have new leadership, at least at the secretariat level. Next, that was polled, supporters of the proposal by the African Union to establish an African Human Rights Court as a substitute for the International Criminal Court. We've heard what the pollsters have said about William Ruto's current case. A majority, and that was polled in this poll, a majority of people, or rather not a majority, but 50% of the people polled said that William Ruto, Deputy President William Ruto's case should be terminated. Another 50% say that it should continue. That's still on a knife edge with respect to that opinion. But here, very interestingly, thinking about whether the African Human Rights Court, as had been suggested and supported by the government with $1 million earlier on this year, should be the court to handle these kinds of cases. 54% in total think that that is what should happen with respect to that court. Moving on back to local issues about CORD leader Raila Odinga, and the question here was what is Raila Odinga's future? What is Raila Odinga's future? A number of issues, a number of questions were raised, a number of options. Whether he should retire from politics entirely, he should continue to lead or work with his political party but not contest the general election, or should he remain active in politics and run for the next general election? The opinions here are quite interesting. 33%, the people in red here, say he should retire from politics, of course. 33% say he should retire. 34%, not a very big percentage in it, just 1% in it, say that he should continue running. Drilling down on these statistics, especially with regard to the popularity, for instance, of the parties within the CORD coalition, show that the majority of the people in CORD are ODM supporters, and that could account for the low showing here with 34%. That, of course, is a heartbeat of politics and administration with respect to the IBC at this point, Yvonne. Quite a number of issues with respect to that. We will be looking at more Ipsos polls, right, and, of course, analyzing them. But in studio, I believe we have some very, very new and fresh eggs.
We will get to those youngins in just a moment. But to just pick up on what you've been talking about the election, about the ICC, and before we get to that interview, we have two great interviews for you today. Let's just talk a little bit more about the elections and about ICC. Former Prime Minister Raila Odinga has told off Jubilee leaders for blaming him over the continuing International Criminal Court case against Deputy President William Ruto. The court leader took issue with Jubilee leaders whom he said were going around the country telling Kenyans that he and other ODM leaders sold out Ruto. Samogina reports.
I would like to say the former Prime Minister still finds himself at pains to absolve himself from the ICC debacle facing the Deputy President, William Ruto. his one-time appointment in the Rift Valley in the run-up to the 2007 election. 7 years since the blooded 2007 election aftermath and subsequent naming of Ruto at the ICC. Raila Odinga finds himself shackled to the notion of fixing his one-time ally during the ODM days. A notion rooted within the Rift Valley region, where he commanded a massive support in 2007 under the stewardship of William Ruto as his linkman.
Kuna yule ndugu yetu alikuwa na wewe siku ile akikusaidia namna hiyo, lakini sasa akakwama, hata amekwambiwa kwa wazungu huko. Sasa wewe ombeanga yeye saa nyingine upikie simu uencourage, kwa sababu siku ile tulikuita Harambee Bay ilikuwa ni kwa sababu ya hiyo kazi.
Nilipinga kabisa. Kwa hiyo Murkomen wanasema uongo. Mimi mwenyewe nilipinga, hata kwa Mungu anaona kama vile nilipinga. Lakini kwa hivyo kweli kidhihiri uongo ujitenge.
Blasting those linking him to the Deputy President ICC woes, Raila questioned his links to fixing Ruto, saying the list of witnesses testifying against the Deputy President and radio journalist Joshua Sang is evidence enough to absolve him from the ICC blame.
Ruto alikuwa mtu yangu. Ningekuwaje mtu ya kupeleka watu yangu tena The Hague? Umeona washahidi The Hague. Ujaona mshahidi ambaye mtumwa na Raila. Mashahidi ni wakina nani? Kule Hague mashahidi ni wakina nani? Tunajulikana.
Huyo onyesha pia hiyo commitment, hata uandike barua ODM siku hiyo iliandika kumpeleka huko, hata Anyang'o ngandike ingine ya kurudisha yeye ndio hii kesi iweze kumalizika.
The exchange over the ICC comes against the backdrop of the Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda admitting she lacks solid evidence to prosecute the Ruto Sang case and should be allowed to use testimonies of missing witnesses who withdrew from her case to tighten the case. The former premier also delved into the controversial Mao Forest eviction that made him lose favor with the Rift Valley voters.
Tena mimi sikutoa watu Mao, sikuchoma manyumba ya watu. Ninachomeka sasa. Nani anachoma?
The leaders were speaking at the burial ceremony of former Kenyan ambassador to the US, Dr. Benjamin Kipkorir, in Marakwet West constituency. Former President Daniel Moi eulogized the academician as a dedicated servant who helped strengthen ties between Kenya and the United States.
Probably one of the greatest legacies Ben is leaving behind is manifest in the number of students he had taught at the University of Nairobi.
Samogina, KTN.
A malaria outbreak in Kakamega County continues to devastate families and has exposed the county's lack of capacity to contain it. More than 100 children are admitted at the Kakamega County Referral Hospital. 7 children have died under the age of 10 already, and already have been and 10, I beg your pardon, have been confirmed dead and after the first admission. Now, health professionals now say that the fact that malaria cases were still being referred to the main hospital should speak volumes to the county government.
Malaria is an entirely preventable and treatable mosquito-borne illness. According to the World Health Organization, most deaths occur among children living in Africa, where a child dies every minute from malaria. Here at the Kakamega Referral Hospital, a picture of children with severe malaria symptoms of severe anemia and respiratory distress paints itself. The county government confirmed 7 infant deaths Monday this week after 100 children were admitted on Sunday. More recent reports increased the number to 12, 5 deaths of infants aged between 7 and 6 months. But that is not the root of the problem. We speak to parents from as far as Murumba, Shikoti and Malanga.
Kuna wenye wanaleta haraka na wengine wanapeana dawa kwanza, wakishindwa ndio wanaleta. Wako wenye wanatibu na kienyeji. Wanaenda kwa wenye wanatengeneza dawa kienyeji alafu wanapewa wanalamba, wengine wanagonga wanaweka kwa maji alafu wanapewa wanakunywa. Even with all preventive measures and interventions available, delays in treatment and a severe shortage of blood in the referral hospital cost the lives of vulnerable infants. This facility only has a makeshift blood bank. The nearest satellites are available in Kisumu and Eldoret.
Blood is very crucial
and we need to develop the culture of donating blood so that we can save life.
And although health is a devolved function,
we are experiencing acute shortage of health workers in this facility. I cannot say only nurses, I will say all the health workers, including doctors, nurses, and everybody. Because a facility like now, this one, you have 2 public health officers. In a place like this, you have 200, 600 nurses. Now we have 220 nurses.
The County Health Director Dalia issued a directive to recall all nurses who were on leave to contain the situation.
We have ruled out the possibility of an outbreak because these children were coming from different sub-counties and different wards. So it's not an outbreak. So mortality is high also due to high admissions. Within the month of May, I think we have lost about 41 children.
But when we came here, there were 103 infants admitted, but only 52 beds available, 2 to 3 patients sharing a bed, and some the floor. 1 doctor and 2 qualified nurses were in charge of the 5A ward. Senator for Kakamega says resources are not the problem.
The county government of Kakamega to immediately, from tomorrow morning, to stock all the health facilities with the required anti-malarials. 2, we are urging the administration in all these centers to make the treatment for malaria free.
Time could either work for or against the malaria burden, because children with low immunity cannot understand why any one of them should die of a disease that is completely preventable and treatable. Dorcas Wangira, KTN, Kakamega.
Quite a number of complaints coming in about the fact that we are still experiencing malaria outbreaks in this day and age, and cholera outbreaks. And the cholera outbreaks over the past week have been linked to food in open areas being sold in different parts of the country, different parts of counties in this republic. And linked to that is our top story today, which is about the Mama Mboga Bill, or the Food Crops Act. And in studio from our city center, we have Karethi Muremi, an economist, to speak about us on the same issue. Now, Mr. Karethi, you've heard of all the furore that has come up since those regulations were released to the public or were made public. Let's speak a bit about formalization, because that is the essence of this discussion with respect to the Mama Mbogas, who represent quite a number of people in the informal agriculture economy. Do you formalize an economy through regulation or through incentive?
Thank you very much. There are 2 key points. The first one is that the role of looking at the trade development, looking at markets, regulations and licensing under our constitution is a county government function. What this means basically is that the economy expects the various counties to create incentives which increase trade within their zones. So, in my view, this particular proposed bill should first be subjected to the 47 counties, and within the spirit of public participation in Article 10, we allow the various people involved in trade to give us their internal input.
Yes.
That's how you then maximize the total economy, by allowing those who are doing the real business to give the real input.
Yes, in terms of that business and in terms of the input, the infrastructure to be able to allow a Mama Mboga, for instance, to get her produce as an individual weighed, packaged and processed as laid down by those regulations within the Food Act. How long do you think this will take? Are we making the process of getting food from farm to fork more bureaucratic than it needs to be and more expensive should this be implemented without the negotiations and the consultation that you speak of?
I think the key point here, Aaron, is to respect that within the spirit of Vision 2030, wholesale and retail is a core pillar of our total economy going forward. What that means is that you are right in terms of the actual infrastructure. The issue should not be the mama boga who is selling in the estate. The issue should be where that mama boga picks the produce. We should be able to trace which farm that produce came from. Where she is selling is where the county government needs to regularize in terms of cleanliness, having water, and those type of things.
Yes. Now, in the short term, should these regulations be implemented, Moremi, what are the effects that you see on the economies within the counties and, of course, the larger economy linked to food?
From the concept of the actual making of the law, the regulations should be subjected first to serious public debate at the county level. So the question of even discussing whether they should be implemented should not arise. This is where now the senators and the MCAs must come very strongly to ensure that the public are not subjected to the wrong regulations before that public has given its actual input. We are not discussing where the food is being sold. We should be discussing the cleanliness of the food that Kenyans eat.
Yes.
How they eat, where they buy, should be the process which we call traceability. Can we trace every item of food? If you remember, like yesterday in the Standard, there was a whole issue about meat for 250,000 residents of Dadora. The researchers from Japan discovering that most of that meat has red because of the animals eating within the dam site.
Yes.
So the issue is a traceability issue. It's not where the food is being sold.
All right. All right. Karedi Moremi, an economist, thank you very much for joining us tonight on KTN Weekend Prime, discussing perhaps what will be one of the more important regulations in recent days, a regulation that deals directly with the stomachs of Kenyan people. Thank you very much for joining us on KTN Weekend Prime. Now we move on to something that perhaps you watched a few minutes ago prior to the 9 o'clock news starting, something that is trending online, and because of two people that Yvonne Okwara is sitting with right now, Michelle Ngele. Hi, Michelle.
Hello.
And Jamal Jemedari Gaddafi. Welcome to the KTN family. Yvonne, take it away.
Absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to present to you the newest members of the team, Michelle Ngele, Jamal Gaddafi. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you so much.
From 6,000 to 2 people.
Yeah. It's been a long journey.
Absolutely. You know, even when I got employed, I never got a trophy.
I know.
So, you know, good for you. Tell me, Michelle, were you expecting this win? Did you have a speech written out? And what do you think, what's next for you here at KTN? I mean, you know, tell us how you're feeling now.
Well, I am so excited. It doesn't show right now, but I'm so excited. I did not expect this, to be honest.
At all?
I mean, I knew people was voting out there, but then I was up against someone very strong, and I have to acknowledge that. And so it could have gone either way.
Right.
And so I had a speech written out for when I don't win instead of
really?
when I win.
Jamal, you had a speech written out for winning.
For winning.
I like that. Congratulations. It's still here. Do you want to read it?
No, it's okay.
Some excerpts of it?
It's kind of long.
Good. Tell me how you're feeling now and, you know, what this means for you.
Niruhusu nitumie Kiswahili.
Tafadhali.
Ndio lugha yangu, si ndio?
Endelea.
Entertainment. Naam, jungu kuwa liko simkoko. Na kusema kweli ninafurahi sio kifani. Siwezi express ninavyojisikia sahi. Na nataka kushukuru tena sana familia yangu kwa support walionipa kuanzia mwanzo hadi nilipofika, na pia nimrudishie Mwenyezi Mungu shukrani, maana kama si yeye pia KTN the presenter wangeniona. Pia narudishia Mwenyezi Mungu shukrani na mashabiki wangu wote, maana katika kampeni umenisaidia tu sana. Nadhani pia Uhuru wa Raila akitaka kusimama tena anione.
You see, I like this guy. Quite a natural when it comes to entertainment. Michelle, tell me about this dream that you've pursued for quite a while, and what this win now means for you. And you know, I'd like us to just take a peek into the future. Where do you think you will be in this industry? What's your goal? What's your dream?
Absolutely. Well, this dream started about 6-7 years ago. 6 years ago to be exact, when I saw the finale of the presenter season
Edith
1.
Kimani.
And so I saw Edith win. I'm like, you know what? I want to be like that girl.
Yeah.
And so when the presenter season 2 came, I came for the auditions. And who do I find at the judges' table? Edith Kimani.
Yeah.
And then along the competition, the judges make her my mentor.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, I feel like I'm reliving. It's like history repeated itself. She was the only last girl standing in the finals. I was the last girl standing in the finals. I ended up winning this, and I feel like it's such a good story for me to tell.
Right.
And in 5 years' time, I expect to be one of the best anchors the organization has on staff. I want to be a voice that people can look up to. I want to be someone people can, you know, I can command authority. People want to listen to what I'm saying. Absolutely.
You're already on the way to doing that.
Yes.
Already.
Thank you,
I'm
Yvonne.
seated here looking at you, and you should be here.
Absolutely.
And hopefully 5, 6, 7, however long it takes, you should be here doing checkpoints on Sunday
Well,
instead of
thank
me
you.
at some point. Jamal,
Naam.
finally, wajiona wapi miaka 5 zijazo?
Naam, kwanza nikinukuu 5 years back nimefanya The Pulse walini interview kuhusiana na mavazi yangu. Mimi ni mwanamitindo ambali na utangazaji. Na waliuliza kitu gani ambao unaazimia. Nilisema mimi nataka kuwa mtangazaji bora hata Afrika. Najiona mtangazaji bora Afrika. Hiyo ni ndoto ambayo nilikuwa nayo. Si ati ni kitu nimeshtukia the presenter.
Yani, safari imeanza.
Yani safari ndio imeanza. Na najua itakuwa changamoto kufanya kitu kizuri kwenye macho na masikio ya watu. Kitu kizuri ambacho kitakubalika na yani washikaji wangu wanaotazama na pia KTN kwa jumla. Najua nina safari ndefu na najua niko jemedari lakini sijakamilika.
Kila safari huanza na hatua moja.
Na hatua moja. Sasa najua mtanijenga zaidi.
By the time we're done with both of you, you will not just be the best TV presenters and anchors at KTN, you'll be the best in the country. So thank you so much. Welcome home.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thank you
to the
so
family.
much.
I know we'll be interacting quite a bit. You will be under my wing, Michelle, specifically for quite a while. Michelle Ngele and Jamal Gaddafi. The KTN presenters. Yes, I was your mentor.
There's one more thing actually. People don't know that Jamal and I have been friends for about 7 years now.
Oh, really?
Yes. We just meet on the presenter.
Oh,
so
this is
really
awesome.
good.
What a great story.
Yeah.
What a great story. We look forward to seeing more and more of them on your screens. You voted for them. You decided. KTN, the presenter season 2, the winners with us. I won't keep them much longer. I understand there's an after party that's happening after the news. So we'll let them go, and then we will have a more serious interview that's coming up in just a bit. We'll be speaking with Winnie Byanyima, the Executive Director, Oxfam International. We'll be speaking on a range of issues, including that elusive formula for women's representation in the country and what it means for development, not just here, but in the region as a whole. Stay with us. This is KTN Weekend Prime.
Welcome back to KTN Weekend Prime, the point of news. Now, in many parts of the country, mental disability is still considered a curse, and those who suffer from it are often cast aside. A Catholic priest, Alejandro Ruiz, has started a center that helps children with this disability to access education. The children are also given life skills like farming and later given jobs as farmers. KTN's Fatma Pole visited the center in Rongai and filed the following report.
Kandisi area of Ongatarongai, 22-year-old Jimmy Mukinya is busy on the shamba. But he's not your average 22-year-old, and this is not just a shamba. Planted on this piece of land are the hopes of over 50 intellectually handicapped youth of the Orion Community Center. Mukinya is one of the beneficiaries of this project. He has lived a life of seclusion for many years, but slowly by slowly, he is being rehabilitated.
Here we train them on the basics, to identify the tools, to identify the plants, the basic farming processes. Here we carry out this training for at least 2 years. And when they graduate, we employ them in the farm.
Each of the students here has a story. For instance, 20-year-old Isaiah Jakaiti with Down syndrome was brought here by his father, his mother having abandoned him because she couldn't handle his condition. Here, they are trained to acquire the most basic self-help skills to enable them to fit in the society.
Education area is the second objective, and we train our students on basic arithmetic skills, readiness skills, and vocational skills.
Seated next to Jakaiti is 22-year-old Susan Wanjiru, who is suffering from cerebral palsy. Wanjiru can do most things on her own. And after she's done with her classes, Wanjiru joins other students in the gym for therapy lessons. This young one here is having a ball quite literally.
I was sitting her on the ball. I was making her to sit on the ball, was trying to control that muscle in that position. She has to also participate in the exercise for it to be effective.
Then there is the state-of-the-art classroom, the multisensory unit or the dark room, where hyperactive students are attended to by therapists. 6-year-old Lewin is in session.
Bring children here. These are called bubble lamps, electric bubble lamps. Normally, as you can see, they change colors, and there are some features of fish that you can see inside there. So you bring a child there. You try maybe if the child can be able to follow the movement of the fish that you can see, and even the change of the colors.
But for the therapist, this is more than just a daily job.
To be close with the person, he doesn't want to be alone. So as you can see right now, this is what he likes doing when we are together here.
Even going an extra mile to ensure the children get good treatment, even when they're at home, by educating their parents.
Any person with this who has these children, bring them out for the people to know that they are there and they exist, and there is hope for them, and there is a future for them also.
Finding a job at a school is now a realistic goal for these students who, after vocational and occupational training like farming, are then employed by the center. Some, like Mukinya, are already reaping the fruits of their hard work.
We gave him a loan of 20,000 shillings, and with what he had saved, he started the process of building. He has actually finished the loan, paying the loan this year in April. He has finished his last installment, and now he's living in his own house.
Tunafanya kitu kidogo na kutoa majani hivyo, tukipeleka hapa tunaambia tupeleke.
But until they are fully independent, this center remains their haven. Across Kenya, millions of disabled people are locked away, mostly by parents who can't afford special treatment. But here in this center, those who would like to call differently abled are given a second chance in life. In here, they are taught to fully explore their potential and find their purpose so that they can take on the world and everything that comes with it. Fatma Pole, KTN.
All right, so from that we want to get into our discussion tonight. Like we promised you, we have with us Winnie Byanyima. She's the Executive Director of Oxfam International. Thank you so much for coming to our studios, and indeed, Karibu Kenya, you've been busy while here.
Thank you for having me.
You've been meeting women leaders, and we'll get to that in a moment. But first, let's start off with what we are grappling with in the country at the moment. It's what we're calling the Mama Mboga Bill, which is an aim at making sure that those that sell vegetables are in designated areas, but it's also an attempt at bringing them into the tax bracket. Many people say this will be a blow to women's empowerment, because many of those that are selling vegetables by the roadside, the small farm holders, are women. What are your thoughts on this?
There's a point in that, and we have to look at it more broadly. It's coming from somewhere. There is pressure coming to the African leaders and African governments to raise taxes, more taxes, to fund their own development. It's important that African countries fund their own development and increase the tax revenues they collect. But what developed countries are saying is not fair, to the extent that they are pushing harder and harder on developing countries to tax even the poorest and to collect resources from those without resources, while not addressing some key issues such as the huge resources that Africa loses from tax loopholes. And these tax loopholes are legal. Some are illegal. It's tax evasion by companies cheating, beating our tax systems, but there is also a lot of tax avoidance that's legal that's supported by developed countries and their multinationals, and we've calculated that Africa alone lost 11 billion tax revenue in 2010. Now, if that could be collected, you wouldn't need to harass market women.
Okay,
and that's money from corporations.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the 2/3 gender rule. We're having an issue with that now, and having 1/3 of women in elective office. We can't seem to agree on the right formula, so much so that there's a bill in Parliament to sort of make this progressive. Women are saying this is indefinite postponement. What is your observation of this case in Kenya?
Kenyan women have been struggling for their political voice for a long time. We respect their struggles. They've been fighting and fighting to be part of democracy. Democracy is not democracy without half the population in it. Now, this is the last lap. It's there in the Constitution. It needs to be implemented. What I found out this week is that there are many formulas on the table, and that's not helpful. Women need to come behind one formula, sell it, take it to the population, get all the women and fair-minded men to support it and push it hard through Parliament. Have one formula. And our experience in the East African countries is that you need to build on the electoral system that exists and not try to change an existing electoral system, because that already is set and is very hard to change. So we have a first past the post electoral system. The quota should be built around that. And secondly, it's important that women are elected, that they are not just nominated. So a formula that guarantees that women are elected by the population so that they are accountable to voters is also important. But thirdly, it's also important that women do not seek a formula that is displacing men. That's a lesson we learned in Uganda and Tanzania. That when you seek a formula that is asking men to give up seats that they have held, they have a sense of entitlement, which is wrong, but it is there. Then you set yourself up for a really terrible fight with men seeing themselves as losers. So the quota in Uganda and Tanzania are additional seats. And there are advantages in that, and we have reaped those advantages.
We have a ballooning wage bill. So selling the idea of additional seats becomes a bit of a hard sell in Kenya.
Well, that's false economics, totally false economics. First of all, the Kenyan parliament is the highest paid parliament in the world. They need to do something to restore their credibility and put their wages down, take their emoluments down, because inequality is bad, it's immoral, it's uneconomic. So there are many ways to raise resources, and this extra pay for a couple of more seats will not bankrupt the Kenyan government. Look, you have these seats in Rwanda, you have them in Uganda, you have them in Tanzania, and all those three countries are poorer than Kenya. So the question of cost is a false economy.
All right. Let's talk about women being ready to lead. And it's a two-pronged question. Do you think that they're ready to do that? And also, do you think they're taking this message out to the women so that they can get grassroots support? A poll survey was done about 3 weeks ago, and it was asking just asking the basic question: if people out there knew the constitutional requirement requiring at least 1/3 of those in parliament to be women. And it would surprise you to know that 33% of women got the correct answer, 24% got it wrong, and 43% didn't even know. So these women who are on the ground, for whom this requirement will benefit, aren't even aware of it. Do you think women leaders in Kenya have done enough in terms of mobilizing the grassroots to get this requirement met?
You raise an important point. Indeed, all women in the country should know about the importance of this provision and what it means for them and their voice, because we don't push this voice for women in the parliament just for a voice in parliament. it is also symbolic. It is supposed to be a strong signal for a woman who will not aspire to be in parliament, and that's the majority, but wherever she is, to know that I have a voice, I have a right to a voice. I can speak and make decisions in my home. I should be able to speak and make decisions in my community, in my local government. So it's so important that this provision doesn't become the battleground just for women elites who will get into parliament, but that it is a debate that's engaging every woman in her household.
All right, I want us to shift gears a little bit from the issue of women and talk about Millennium Development Goals for just a moment. That meeting that's coming up in September this year, world leaders at the UN General Assembly will be taking stock of the last 15 years and making plans for the next. Many people have said that the SDGs are far too ambitious. We want, 15 goals and 54 targets? And the issue also about funding these development goals. What are your thoughts on how far we have come and how we're going to get the money to actually fund this, so it's not about donor aid anymore?
You raise very important questions. The world governments have agreed to 17 goals. They are okay. They are achievable, but indeed they are ambitious. And the question of financing them is critical. Another meeting is going to happen in July here in Addis Ababa, and that will be about financing those sustainable development goals. And what we are seeing is that, again, first the donors, who usually give a portion of financing as aid, are not being ambitious about living up to their commitment of aid. But disturbingly too, we see that developing countries are net contributors to rich countries through the money they lose through tax avoidance and tax evasion. Yesterday, the IMF released a report that showed that the total resources that are lost to developing countries is more than the total aid, that's 139 billion coming into the developing countries. I mean, if only we could get an agreement, and that's what Oxfam wants at the meeting of the financing for development in Addis Ababa, an agreement to have an international tax body that is setting the rules for global corporate tax, so that we close all those loopholes that companies use, the tricks they use to cheat us of our revenues. That could fund our development. That would stop us begging for aid.
Let's talk about civil society and civil liberties across the region. Many say, particularly in Kenya, the spaces are shrinking. Civil society was once quite robust. With the election of 2003, and we had the new government with Mwai Kibaki, many civil society activists actually made their way into either government or in parliament. And some say civil society is dead right now, or that it has no place. We have a fully functioning democracy. We have a Bill of Rights, freedom of media, freedom of association. We have a new constitution that came out 5 years ago. Some say civil society isn't needed anymore. What would you say?
First, it's important to make the correction that civil society is not synonymous with NGOs. NGOs are part of civil society. Civil society includes churches, trade unions, professional bodies, and all kinds of associations that make up a vibrant democracy. I think Kenya can be proud of having a vibrant democracy here on this continent. I mean, you have a press that's fairly free. You have political parties that contest elections and share power through elections. You are a fairly democratic country, but it is true that across Africa we are seeing new laws coming in, particularly laws that are supposed to tighten security in order to deal with the threat of terrorism, and laws that are intended to promote sustainable development, and these are often targeting non-governmental organizations. Non-governmental organizations are seen as either anti-development because they are shouting about environmental damage, shouting about the rights of poor people being pushed off land, and they also think Many governments who are undemocratic think that we are the ones encouraging young people to rise against dictatorships. But to tell you the truth, Africa's youth are going to be our blessing, or they are going to be a demographic bomb, because our young people are so many. We are the youngest continent. In 25 years, will be more people on this continent than Chinese. And these young people, if they don't get jobs, if they remain locked out of democratic processes, will explode on us. And it won't be NGOs to blame.
Right. Let's talk about a vibrant democracy such as this one. Even on social media, people are pretty free to speak their minds on various issues. What's the role of civil society in a case like that? Civil society here was for pushing for freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom of media. That seems to have happened. What do you think should be the way civil society can now re-engineer and remodel itself to be relevant to modern day challenges?
Okay, earlier on, when there were struggles for democracy, for multi-party democracy, for a new constitution, NGOs were seen to be in the vanguard of that struggle for democratization. Now you say the democracy is achieved. But in a thriving democracy, then, organizations of civil society organize and channel the interests of groups in society through the decision-making process. So you get organizations that work on environment. They will be there lobbying politicians, lobbying corporates on environmental issues. Organizations like ours who fight poverty, we will always have a role to organize, empower people to demand their rights against poverty, to benefit economically, to be part of growth. So more and more organizations of civil society will be there to champion particular interests of people, to organize, for people to organize and get what they deserve from their governments, from their companies.
Let's talk about civil liberties across the continent. The events in Burundi, and we also hear in Rwanda, they're now debating that bill that would essentially allow President Kagame to have to run for yet another term. And also what's happening within your own home country in Uganda. What are your thoughts on what's happening in Burundi right now, gearing up for an election, the situation as it is, the people trying to contest or even speak out against President Nkurunziza, and we know of what's happened with the opposition leader there being killed?
Again, a very important question. From fighting for women's right to be part of democracies, then you have to ask yourself, what is happening in the area of democratic development in our region? It's not very positive, I must say. What we saw in Burundi were young people coming out on the streets. They've been on the streets for 2-3 weeks now, insisting that the Arusha agreements be upheld. Those agreements are so important for securing peace and putting Burundi on a democratic path. I can't understand why an individual should insist so much on his legal right to contest an election, even if it means that people should be shot and killed. Why are you so important? What's that ego about? I mean, if you think about it in your home, how many times do you give up your right simply in order to have peace in the house? You don't insist, it's my right to speak and I'm going to insist because I'm the mother. You just say, okay, have your way. This is what I think, that in Burundi, it's not even a legal issue of whether or not this incumbent can run. It should be a question of judgment, political judgment, that in the interest of this country, if there's this group of people who are seeing that I should not contest, then stand aside, let others contest. That's how I would see it. And I'm seeing the repression of people, the force that has been used to suppress the protesters, as very negative for our region. And I really would like to discourage the regional leaders who are going to be meeting this weekend from encouraging the incumbent to hold on, to encourage that the agreements are upheld. And look at you ask about my country. I can tell you that in my country we have a typical illiberal democracy where you have organized elections every 5 years, but where the press is not free, parties are suppressed, human rights are suppressed, and there's no freedom of association or assembly or speech. How can that be a democracy? So we need to develop our democracies further. Regular elections don't define what democracy is. In fact, they are managed elections in many countries. You can get a situation like Egypt, where Mubarak was overthrown a few months after he got 97% of the vote. What does that mean?
Let's talk. You've mentioned your home country, Uganda, talking about democratization. You left active politics some years back to get into the diplomatic corps and the work that you're doing now. Are you willing to go back home to Uganda and to be in the fight against democracy? Would you, Winnie Byanyima, consider running for elective office, running for the presidency in Uganda?
I am asked many times that question, and I could. I am ready. I could run. But today, I have a good job fighting poverty around the world, lifting those people who many of these governments won't even give a voice, won't even give a chance, an opportunity to be part of growth. I give them a chance. I fight on their behalf. And I'm happy to serve Oxfam in that role. But I can tell you, I care about my country. I watch the events in that country. And yes, I keep listening to this voice, and at some point, I may rise to the challenge.
So you would one day, after Oxfam, after it's all done?
I can. I could.
All right, absolutely. Let's wind up with your thoughts on where Africa needs to go. I know you're talking a lot about taxes and you know, just shoring up our own revenues from within. What, in your view, because we also have Agenda 2063, which is talking about Africa's development agenda over the next 50 years, what in your view would get us to that point, would get us to, once we're discussing the SDGs for the next 15 years, what is it, that one thing you think that will turn this continent around?
The problem with our leaders is that they are often not serious. They want to engage in big dreams and big plans, and they fail to make, you know, step-by-step plans to take their countries forward. The Sustainable Development Goals are a plan for the next 20 years. Pushing on those is very important, and that's why I'm focused very much on how to raise the resources and also put in place the strategies that will use those resources to promote a growth, but a growth that is providing the millions of jobs that our young people need. So first we must raise our resources. That means we must tax, we must stop giving these tax exemptions to all these companies, stop this unhealthy competition of trying to give more and more tax breaks in order to attract business, but collaborate and extract fair taxes from companies that make money here, but use that money, reinvest it in those sectors that create the millions of jobs that our young people need. So the work is cut out for our leaders. And it's not rocket science. Those who are doing it are growing and creating employment and lifting people out of poverty, like China. I mean, Chinese were not made on Mars. They are human beings like us. We can do it too. We can do it. So it's about collecting our revenues and putting them behind strategies that promote jobs, jobs, growth that comes with a lot of jobs and incomes for our young people.
Thank you very much for that. We wish you the best, and we hope you will come back to KTN again once you're around, and we look forward to what will be happening in July in Addis, and of course later on in September with the UN General Assembly. Thank you very much for your time.
You're a great host. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here. Been speaking to Winnie Byanyima. She's the Oxfam International Executive Director, talking about Africa and where we need to go in the next 15, 20, 30, 40 years, shoring up our own revenues to finance well-placed strategies for development on the continent. John Alanamu has been following our conversation and sums it up. He has What's the Point tonight.
Very inspiring discussion that we've had tonight with Winnie Byanyima, the Oxfam International Executive Director. Quite a number of points and quite a number of topics covered, but here are some of the key points that were discussed this evening. Number one, women empowerment. We have been talking about this in this country as with respect to the 1/3 gender rule, and according to Ms. Byanyima, it needs to be a conversation that's not just being spoken about at the leadership level, but right down in the homes, for it to be organic and for women empowerment to begin to get traction as something that can happen as a reality within this country and within other countries in Africa. In Rwanda, there's a great example in terms of parity with respect to leadership there. It can happen here as well. Secondly, Africa's youth have become a topic of discussion across the continent. The youth bulge in this continent is one that could potentially be something that could change the fortunes of this continent for the better. The energy of the youth can be harnessed to be able to build an economy like none other across the world. But if not harnessed properly and harnessed for evil and not taken care of, then that same youthful energy could be used to burn down this continent. Sentiments from Ms. Byanyima. And finally, with respect to to Kenya's parliament and the kind of money that is being spent with respect to its parliamentarians, the cost of our parliament is a bit too high. The cost of our National Assembly is too high, and perhaps this speaks to some other conversations that we've had here on KTN with respect to the focus of our leaders, not just here in Kenya, but in Africa, with respect to wages, as opposed to harnessing the potential of various sectors of the economy to be able to grow that economy. Already a statistic that was pointed to here in terms of the outflows from tax avoidance, tax evasion from Africa, already outweighing the amount of money that is coming in terms of growth. Points to ponder on. Great interview. You can catch it online, and that is the point tonight.
It's time for KTN Sports. My name is Lynn Washira. When we kick off the bulletin on a very positive note, where the Kenya National 15's rugby team beat visiting Portugal 41-15 in an international test friendly played in Nairobi. The inspired Simba will now shift attention to the Africa Cup of Nations qualifiers next month. Robinson Okenya reports from the Rugby Football Union grounds.
Despite Saturday's chilly weather in the capital city, hundreds of Kenyan fans turned out in their numbers to cheer on the home team as Simba took on Portugal in an international friendly. Simba were quick to prey on their Portuguese Lobos as Darwin Mukiza made the first try of the match. Kenya did not lay their foot off the gas pedal as Kevin Omiyo increased the advantage to 14-0. Portugal, however, determined not to be taken for a drink as they grabbed their first try of the match. Moments later, Lobos added 3 points from a penalty try for a 14-10 scoreline. Simbas continued to cling on to the lead through a penalty to put matters at 17-10 heading into the break. The hosts came back charged in the second half as Captain Brian Yukuli touched down toward Kenya's points. Debutant Sami Olechu was sure not to miss out on the score sheet as he put Kenya 31-10 up before Simba added 3 more points. Robert Aringo hammered in the final nail as Kenya cruised to a 41-10 victory.
But I think they played really, really good tonight, and they were the deserved winners because we don't have a chance. They played really good. We tried at the end.
The boys have believed in God, and I'll tell you, the spirit of Kenya, the smile of Kenyans,
we want Kenyans to smile about something.
Darwin Mukiza was named the man of the match for his exploits, as the win for Kenya will reflect in the world rankings.
Simba gave Kenyans the perfect Madaraka Day gift by mauling Lobos. The focus now shifts to the African Cup qualifiers, where Kenya plays Zimbabwe next. Robinson Okenye, KTN Sports.
And moving on, Kenya Defence Forces and Kenya Pipeline Company volleyball teams are on the verge of defending the African Merchant Assurance Company Amaco International Volleyball Tournament that started at the Eldoret Polytechnic today. KDF and General Service Unit men were the first teams to qualify for the semi-final matches set for tomorrow. KDF fought hard to claim the semi-final spot against newcomers Bungoma County. The battle in the five-setter clash went down the wire after rain interrupted the encounter. KDF won the first two sets 25-15 and 25-23 before Bungoma took charge of third and fourth sets 25-20 and 26-24. In Mombasa, Kenya's young and record breaker Emily Muteti was at home again to smash 4 national records during the Coast Inter-Clubs Invitational Swimming Championships at the Aga Khan Academy, Mombasa. Emily, who has also broken several international records and a potential Kenyan team to All African Games in Congo, Brazzaville in August, smashed 2 national records in the girls 16 years and over 400 meters freestyle. Kenyan swimming sensation after the famous Danford brothers and swimming for Mombasa Aquatic Club set a new record of 4 minutes 34.17 seconds in the 16 years and over, erasing the previous record of Daniela Awori set on April 24th last of 4 minutes 49 seconds. Emily went ahead to grab the all-comers record of Gauri Kotecha of 4 minutes 44.24 seconds.
Mama has Mortein Doom, which makes mosquitoes go away and not come back the whole night. So you get a peaceful night's sleep all night long.
Mortein Doom. A peaceful night is a Mortein Doom night.
All right, so we've come to the end of our bulletin tonight, and would like to take some of your feedback, particularly on the Mama Mboga interview, interview and story. Walter Owino says, kama Uhuru anaweza buy soda kwa kiosk, who are they to dictate to us where to buy our mboga? And Elias Creed says, if you scrap them, it's like killing the gazelle in the food chain. No one can survive these rules.
There's a guy here called Cleo the Love Child, says, remember Mama Oliech and Victor Wanyama was Mama Oliech and Victor Wanyama's mom was a Mama Mboga, and she raised her kids to be superstars.
Absolutely.
Very interesting feedback here. Although I think, Yvonne, to play devil's advocate here, I don't think we're looking at the law in its entirety. There is some value in looking at the way our food is produced in this country. There is a place for standards. But do you create a speed bump before you make a road? You know, that's the question I guess we need to ask ourselves.
Putting the cart before the horse, but like you say, the idea of, you know, the whole farm to fork sort of theory about taking a look at the quality from the way it is grown, its transportation to the time it finally gets there. But I think what Karidhi Muremi said was very important in terms of involving the Mwananchi on the ground and getting their views. Agriculture is a devolved function. And so it's something that the Mwananchi definitely needs to be heard, particularly the Mama Mboga. I think they need to be included in this debate.
And I really feel like that voice going through the food crops bill and also looking at the regulations, you feel that there's an absence of that common touch with respect to knowing what the issues are on the ground, and I guess that's why the institution that is the Mama Mboga is being so thoroughly defended by people online and people everywhere.
That's right. Thank you for your feedback on that. Thank you also for your feedback on the discussion we had with Winnie Bianyima. Jerry Ogo says the SDGs are achievable. We may only need to earmark funding for implementation. I think there was also one from Alamin Kimathi who says congratulations congratulations to her. You say good stuff and good advice to Pierre Kurunzinza to not run. Thank you very much for all your feedback on that, and indeed for the show tonight. My name is Yvonne Okwara Matole, our sign language interpreter William Silla. The party continues for the new presenters apparently after this bulletin, so do make sure you tune into that. Russia is the after party of the presenters.
And that is where some of us are headed, Yvonne. My name is John Allen Namu. Have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. The day before Madaraka Day, we're having a discussion on an important subject, one that took our freedom fighters to the bush. That subject is land. 2 years on, has the Jubilee government implemented at least even half of what they said they would with respect to its manifesto? Monday we've got 2 groundbreaking documentaries on the same, as well as our coverage of Madaraka Day celebration. So do tune in tomorrow night on KTN Weekend Prime.
Right. Good night. See you tomorrow.